Clerk, would you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Roberta Abdul Salam. Robbie Ash. Stacy Blakely.
Present.
Jim Durrett.
Present.
William Floyd.
I'm here.
Roderick Frierson.
Present.
Brian Glover. Frida Hardage.
Present.
Russell McMurray. Al Pond.
Present.
Catherine Powers.
Present.
Rita Scott. Reginald Snyder.
Present.
Christopher Tomlinson.
Present.
Thomas Worthy.
I'm not sure you could hear me, Tyrene. I may have been on mute. This is Rita Scott. I am present.
Thank you. I have 9 board members present.
Can I show Roberta Abdul Salam was on, I think. Is that correct? Did you get her?
She didn't respond.
Uh,
She did it. I have her present. Thank you.
You got me?
10 board.
Okay.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
This is Rod Frierson, so moved.
Roberta seconds.
Okay, we have a first and second. Are there any abstentions? Are there any no votes? The resolution passes. The next item is on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the execution of a license agreement with the Atlanta Hawks for the placement of an electronic billboard and power data easement. That will be presented by Robin Boyd, Director of Real Estate. Robin, we cannot hear you.
Mr. Pond, Robin Boyd is having trouble with her system right now.
Okay.
Invite
I
to
would
her.
say if she needs some more time, we can go.
Can everyone hear me now? It's Robin.
Yes, Robin, go ahead.
Oh, my gosh, I am so sorry. I was looking for a link. I went up in person. I apologize.
All is
Okay. If you can go to the next slide for me. And so I'm on, if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
But if someone could go to the next slide, please.
Robin, can you see the slides?
Yeah, there's a delay, but I will start.
Go back.
So this is a map of, this is the Hawks have requested from us to install a billboard, and this is the map of where the location will be. So it will be at the GWCC where you come up the escalator toward the State Farm Arena, and there is a plaza behind that, and then behind that, there's an actual triangle of grassy area. And what they would like to install, if you could go to the next slide, please, is a 10-foot high billboard that's going to be about 47 feet wide, and it will be electronic. So the messages will change. And in addition to the footprint for the billboard, this will include underground area for data lines and power. And in addition, we will also be giving them some temporary easements for construction laydown and for crane swing. And the monthly, the appraised value for the monthly rental came out to I believe it was $4,040 per month. So it comes out to $48,480 a year. And over the 5 years, it's $242,400. And in addition to them having the billboard, they will also work with MARTA to put up MARTA announcements to encourage ridership when they have events at the sports complex, and I'm sure anything else if we need them to ask them to announce it for us. There is federal interest. There's a 79% federal interest in that property, and we have requested FTA concurrence. And therefore, I'm asking for permission for MARTA to execute a 5-year license agreement with the Hawks for their billboard. Thank you.
Before we have a discussion, could I get a motion and a second for the item?
Move approval.
Move
Jim
approval.
Durrett.
Second, Roberta.
Okay, we have a first and second. Now, are there any questions or discussion?
Yeah, this is Rod Frierson. Is 5 years a standard length of this agreement? Could it be shorter and then reevaluated before then?
Well, 5 years is actually what we use for the license agreements. And there is always a clause in every one of our agreements that allows, if MARTA needs that property, we have the right to request it back with, I believe it's a 90-day notice. And that's in this agreement, and it's in all of our license agreements.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Long.
Robin?
Yes.
Is this, well, I think that it is, but this is an example of MARTA licensing our air rights? Would that be the case?
Yes, we're licensing actually the ground. It does go into the air here. But basically all of the appraised value on the license is done on the footprint, so the land area. But again, if we need this air rights, or if we need this back for MARTA needs, it is written into the agreement. It will be written in that we can get that back with a 90-day notice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Robin, in the pre-brief, you shared how the $48,000 a year was arrived. I think that would be important for you to just take 1 or 2 sentences to share that.
So MARTA engaged a third-party appraiser, and they came and they did the valuation 2 ways and then averaged them. So the first way was basically on the footprint, like what is the land value of that footprint and the area for the data and the electric lines. And then they took what are the rental comparables in that area for that space, and they took those 2 values and averaged them.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Robin? Not, I'll call the question. Are there any abstentions? Are there any no votes? The resolution passes. The third item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of the Kensington, Indian Creek, and H.E. Holmes Station Master Plan. That'll be led by Debbie Frank, Director of Transit-Oriented Development.
Yes,
Debbie?
good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I can.
Okay, good morning, Chair Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Ms. Scott, committee members, and Mr. Parker. You have before you today for consideration of approval, a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for Kensington, Indian Creek, and H.E. Holmes Station master plans. This resolution would result in MARTA securing the services of planning consulting firms to complete TOD master plans for these stations. Next slide, please. Why TOD master planning? It creates a vision for development at our stations. It's an opportunity to engage the community in the planning process, and it creates a better opportunity to ensure equitable TOD. It will support rezoning needed to allow for the level of density that we would like to see at our stations. And it's the perfect path to implementing TOD at our stations. And needless to say, we know TOD increases ridership and generates revenue for the authority. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share a little bit just about what's happening at our Kensington station. It is on our blue line, the East Blue Line. We have 35 acres. In 2019, the board approved the solicitation of proposals for TOD here at the station after committee suggested that we issue an RFP after we received an unsolicited proposal for TOD at the station. We went before the county last year for rezoning, and the Board of Commissioners and the community really encouraged us to undertake a master planning exercise first for the 35 acres at Kensington and then come back for the rezoning. So that's what we're hoping to do with your approval today. Kensington Station is a future location for station soccer. As a matter of fact, we are in the early planning stages for station soccer at Kensington and Eastlake, hoping that those fields are in place in this year. It is also a location for our future location for our fresh MARTA market. And if you recall, the area shaded in red just south of Kensington Road is the location of the Housing Authority of DeKalb County's offsite TOD that we're working with them and on. We're hoping to begin construction later, late fall of this year. It will be a 250 unit apartment development with 130 of those units being made available for seniors. And it will also have 25,000 square feet of office space. And I think the Housing Authority of DeKalb County is looking at having their headquarters actually here. Next slide, please. So at our Indian Creek station, it's just two miles east from Kensington, we too are in need of rezoning here at this station. The area just south of our station is the densely vegetated area, is the location for a future 230 unit townhome development by Kaplan Residential. And last year they received the rezoning to support that development. It's about 20 acres. Indian Creek is also part of Georgia GDOT's major mobility investment program. This is the Express Lane project. Will add express drop lanes at Red Ann Road, both north and southbound. And then we also will have express bus access to the station via the express lane ramp to Elder Lane. And this express bus access will then access MARTA's bus loop. The east side of construction is set for to begin the second quarter of 2025 through the fourth quarter of 2028. So some exciting things happening around our Indian Creek station. Next slide, please. And just taking a closer look at H.E. Holmes, this is one of 7 MARTA stations that's within the opportunity zone. We have 22 acres here. It is also on the blue line, our west blue line. The board approved the release of proposals for TOD in 2019. We do need rezoning here as well to support the level of TOD we would like to see. It is a current location of one of 5 of our fresh MARTA market sites. And we also have a real interesting business incubator located here called iVillage. It's a small shipping container development that MARTA teamed up with the City of Atlanta and Invest Atlanta to create. This is also a future location for station soccer. And I will just say that we're requesting approval from the board to allow for us to complete master planning work at these 3 stations. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
I'll ask the committee members for a motion on the second.
Ms. Hartage, I move to approve.
This is Rod Frierson, I second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Are there any questions?
I just, hey Debbie, Jim Durrett.
Hi,
This
Jim.
is to authorize MARTA to solicit proposals for the master planning work from A&E firms out there.
Yes, from A&E planning firms. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Chairman Frierson, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you. Wonderful things to see these particular stations. So at the Indian Creek Station, the capital development that is built there now, is that on MARTA's property?
No, it is not.
Okay, it's adjacent to
not.
this.
It's adjacent to our property, correct.
Great. And so this master plan, how does it work with developments like that now? This is one that's already being structured and already been brought before the county. How do you shape it at this point to be as part of the master plan?
Right. And that's a very, very interesting question. We were engaged actually by the county prior to approving the rezoning and really thought about how that connectivity from our future TOD or MARTA's property would unfold. So there will be some synergy created between our development and that development. A similar situation actually is happening right now with the development by Toll Brothers next to our Edgewood Candler Park station. So the city and the various, people that are deciding on the zoning and how that should unfold, they look at our adjacent property to see what that relationship would look like. And so we would be engaged with them. I know Kaplan Residential, they are aware of our interest in doing TOD at the station, and will be likely engaged in the planning process with us.
Okay, great. And that, once again, that prepares us for the other stations that may not have anything right now, but as they begin to unfold around our TOD development that we may be in control of, we have a plan that it gives everybody a landscape to look at. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Are there any other-
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Scott.
Because there are 3 different master plans that we're looking at. In soliciting, has there ever been a situation where those that are being vetted would be better for one location than the other, and so therefore it may be more than one company that's actually participating?
Yes, that is possible. So our approach here is not to necessarily say that you should submit a proposal for the HE home station. We're going to evaluate the firm's ability just to do master planning, right? And then make a decision internally with our committees who we think would be best suited for which station. So the idea is to spread the opportunity to more than one planning firm. That allows for us to help with economic development, needless to say, and job creation, but it also speeds up the opportunity to complete these plans in a fairly quick manner. We included a 2-year timeline because it allows for us to do the planning work and hopefully close out the contract. So everything is wrapping up within that timeline. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Frank? Okay, we have a motion by Hartage, a second by Frierson. I'll call the question. Are there any abstentions? Are there any no votes? The resolution passes.
Thank
The fourth item on the, and thank you, Ms. Frank. The fourth item on the agenda is an authorization, is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of for authorizing an award of a contract for the procurement of specialized professional services. That'll be led by Marcia Anderson-Bomar, AGM for Capital Programs.
Thank you very much, Chairman Pond, Mayor Floyd, Ms. Scott, members of the board, and Mr. Parker. I come before you today to ask for your approval for the award of the contracts that were just referenced. Next slide, please. So you may recall that several months ago, I did a presentation requesting the permission to do the procurement, and the history on this is that we had been using GCPS. The board was interested in a competitive solicitation, which we have now completed. The 5 departments in the authority that have traditionally utilized this GCPS contract that will continue to use the services, the specialized professional services, are the ones listed on this slide. And the budget that the board approved as part of the approval to move forward is the $43 million, which, if you recall, is about half of what the previous 5-year budget was for the same type of work. And that's because we're streamlining things, and we're taking some tasks back in-house. So we've been able to reduce the dependence on the outside consultants. Next slide, please. So this was a very interesting and exciting process because of the range of services that were being solicited. We did receive 40 proposals. After the initial review, 37 of those were deemed responsive. We formed both technical teams with subject matter experts, as well as our traditional source evaluation committee, or selection committee. Everybody reviewed all 37 of the responsive proposals. We met several times to have discussions to determine the most qualified in each of the subject matter categories. And ultimately, we selected 9 firms that will cover all of the areas. Each firm may only be assigned one or more of the areas. They're not all covering all of the different department needs. The term of the contract will be a 3-year base term with 2 1-year options. The companies that were selected, 6 of the companies committed to meeting the 30% DBE goal. 2 of the companies committed to exceeding the DBE goal. And one of the companies did not respond to the request that was made by our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and we'll discuss the implications on the next slide. Next slide, please. What you see in front of you is the list of firms that were selected and the departments that they are qualified to serve because of the type of personnel that they brought forward through the solicitation. So each of the companies has their specialty areas, and so as the proposals were reviewed, the subject matter experts, the technical teams, helped the selection committee to make those good matches. So cybersecurity needs firms that are, for example, very familiar with Homeland Security protocols for our network security. So those firms were identified by those technical experts and matched up with the cybersecurity department. Next slide, please. So the firms that were selected, you'll note that there are 8 firms on this list. As a result of not providing the requested information by the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, one of the firms that had initially been selected has been removed from the list at this time and is not being recommended for a contract. So you have in front of you the 8 firms that we are requesting approval to move forward with contracting. Next slide, please. And with that, I would like to request your approval of the resolution authorizing the award of contract for specialized professional services, RFP 47520.
Thank you, Marcia. Could I get a motion and a second, please?
Worthy moves.
Durrett will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Tom Worthy, a second by Jim Durrett. Are there any questions for Ms. Anderson-Bomar?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. This is Roberta.
Yes.
Marcia, are there any of those companies in the 9 minority-owned companies? I know they're meeting DBE, but are any of them minority-owned?
I believe that one of the teams has a DBE partnership, but I don't believe any of the firms are certified DBEs that are primes.
And if I looked at your chart correctly, HTNB would only service one area. Is that correct? Or did I look at it wrong?
I think that they are actually have pre-qualified in several areas. If we could go
So
back.
all the areas, yeah.
Yes, there were
I couldn't
multiple
tell if that
areas.
meant all the areas or if that was just the one in the first column.
No, there. Oh, whoops.
Okay.
There you
Oh,
go.
okay.
So yeah, they qualified for 4 of the 5 areas.
4 out of 5. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? Not, I'll call the question. Are there any abstentions? Are there any no votes? The resolution passes. The
Thank you
5th
very
item
much.
is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement of surveying services, and will be presented by Larry Prescott, Interim Chief of Capital Programs. Larry?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Mayor Floyd, Ms. Scott, Mr. Parker, and board members. Today, I'd like to present to you a request for a resolution of authorizing the award of contract for the procurement of survey services, REI AE 46194. Next slide, please. This has been an ongoing contract for a capital program support that expired in 2019, and the request to solicit was presented to this board committee back in February 20. And this program is basically that supports the basis of all of our capital program contracts and projects that are ongoing, supporting the planning, design, construction projects, real estate program, transit-oriented development, the transit adjacent development, as we discussed at Indian Creek, making sure that they're within our boundaries or outside of our boundaries, maintaining the primary control, utilities, facilities and trackway, as well as closing out projects for as-built drawings. Next slide. So over the past year, we have interviewed 16 different companies that proposed on this, and the contract terms that were set up were 3-year base, $3 million, with 2 one-year options of $1 million each for $5 million total for the 5-year program. The DBE goal is 25%. And of those 16 firms, the Selection Evaluation Committee recommends the following: KCI, T2 UES, which is formerly known as Cardno TBE, and Woolpert. These 2 of them, KCI and Woolpert, were on the previous contract, and Cardno TBE was our support team on the Atlanta streetcar project. All of them have multiple joint use DBE contractors or consultants shown down there below. Next slide. So in short, I'm requesting the board for approval of the REI 46194 selection of KCI, T2, and Woolpert. So thank you, and any questions I'd be happy to answer right now.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Can we get a motion and a second, please?
Durrett, I'll move approval.
Roberta, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Durrett and a second by Ms. Abdul Salam. Are there any questions for Mr. Prescott? I hear no questions, no discussion, so I'll call the question. Are there any abstentions? Are there any no votes? The resolution passes. Larry,
Thank you.
still up? You have a briefing for operations and maintenance of technical support services.
Yes, sir. So, moving right along. This is a briefing for solicitation of the Operations and Maintenance Technical Support Services program. Next slide. Our current Operations and Maintenance Technical Support Services, we have a 5-year contract, and we're in the last year of that now. And WSP and HNTB are the two consultant teams, and their contract expires next year, June and July. So we are moving forward now to start this process so we can have these teams on board, the new teams on board for any transition before that these terms expire. This O&M technical support is another continuous on-call technical engineering support. We need these consultant teams to supplement our current technical staff for pop-ups and or anything that comes along in any of the maintenance or operations in the field. Next slide, please. So specifically, the technical needs beyond normal consultant project development is the plan specification review, all the standard type assessments that we need out in the field, startup, industrial type things, all beyond, again, specialty needs beyond our current staff, core staff that we have now. And to pull in as needed for such as emergency programs like we did for the Peachtree Fire event and other issues we've had out in the field, is bring them on as needed and then release them again. Next slide. So what we're proposing is, again, like I said, the procure over the next year before the expiration of the other two. This is going to be a similar 3-year base with 2 1-year options. It's going to be $2 million a year with a total 5-year program of $10 million. And this, of course, the services will be provided with funding via the capital projects throughout the program for each year. Next slide. So there, I'd like to request authorization, or just a briefing that we're going to proceed with procurement, and any questions that before we start the solicitation, I'd like to answer those for you now. Thank you.
Any questions from Mr. Prescott?
Yes, sir.
Larry, I have a question. This staffing will be embedded inside the MARTA facilities full-time, correct?
Only as needed. So some of them may be, but we're trying to reduce those with full-time equivalents. And so the intent is to have them come in on project-specific needs, technical specialty needs that we don't have full-time equivalents for.
So unlike the past, if you went back 4, 6, 8 years ago, you will not have full-time people embedded within the MARTA staff except on a project-by-project basis or some other sort of need?
Yes, sir. Right now, of the 5 programs that we do have similar to this, we only have 3 staff that are pretty much full-time, but they're supporting ongoing long-term projects and just to maintain that technical expertise.
So the departments that would need this staff would basically request to bring in 1 or 2 people or whatever is needed for a temporary workload, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And this past year is shown that we don't necessarily need them in-house, housing them in-house. So we have worked out that very well over the past year working remotely.
And real quickly, if you know off the top of your head, wasn't this like 30, 40 million a year at one time? A big number?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We had 20 different seconded staff, so to speak, for that program. We've got it down to 3 now.
Yeah, and you've replaced that with other contracts. All right, that's all I have. Any other questions from Mr. Prescott? Are there any other matters to come before the committee? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting, and the next meeting is operations and safety.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Pond. I'll call the Operations and Safety meeting to order. Ms. Huff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Roberta Abdul Salam,
Present.
Robbie Ash, Stacy Blakely, Jim Durrett,
I'm here.
William Floyd,
I'm here.
Roger Farson,
Present.
Brian Glover, Rita Hardage,
Present.
Russell McMurray, Al Pond. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Present?
Catherine. Okay.
Oh, I'm
Catherine
sorry.
Powell,
Present.
Rita Scott,
Present.
Reginald Snyder,
Present.
Richard Tomlinson,
Present.
Thomas Worthy.
Present.
Stacy Blakely, I'm present as well.
Thank you. 13 board members present.
Thank you, Ms. Huff. The first item on the agenda is approval of the April 29th, 2021 Operations and Safety Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move.
Hardage, I move to approve.
Durrett, second.
Hardage moved, Durrett second. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Any abstentions? Any no votes? The minutes have been approved. Agenda item number 2 is a briefing on the maintenance of way update. Addie Matthew, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to brief the committee on MARTA's Office of Maintenance of Way, or MOW. My name is Addie Matthew, and I'm the Director of Maintenance of Way. At the end of this presentation, I hope to inform you about the Department of Maintenance of Way and the core critical systems that we maintain to ensure the safe and on-time travel of our patrons. Next slide, please. So for this briefing, I'll give you an overview of MOW. I'll introduce the branches and the team leads. I will explain the responsibilities of each branch, discuss key performance indicators or KPIs, give you a summary of our major capital projects, and finally give an update on our efforts to fight wayside fires. Next slide, please. MOW is a fundamental part of the passenger and rail line and station experience. We are responsible for the right-of-way maintenance and inspection. The department focuses on maintaining the safety and reliability of the wayside and applies generally accepted standards of maintenance and providing safe and reliable operating systems throughout the authority for our external and internal customers. Maintenance of Way is committed to MARTA's strategic priorities and endeavors. We meet our objectives and standards through the combined efforts of the director and the following 3 branches. Next slide, please. Our electrical power and equipment, or EP&E branch, is headed by Connie Theory. Connie has almost 50 years experience of electrical and electrical systems experience and manages a staff of 75 employees. Next slide, please. Connie and the EP&E team are responsible for the traction power systems, consisting of 68 traction power rooms that deliver safe and reliable third rail power to propel the authority's rail cars and to maintain the wayside emergency trip stations. EP&E maintains the auxiliary power systems consisting of 106 auxiliary rooms, which deliver safe and reliable auxiliary power to the authority's electrical loads to include lighting, elevators, escalators, heating and ventilation, and all rail and bus support facilities. Connie and his team also maintain the lighting systems which provide well-lit rail yards, passenger stations, and parking lots. Next slide, please. Automatic train control. That branch is headed by Timothy Bryant. Tim has over 30 years experience in operations, maintenance, and management to include the U.S. Army, WMATA, and MARTA. Tim manages a staff of 72 employees. Next slide, please. Tim and his team are responsible for the maintenance and repairs of MARTA's train control system, which regulate the movement of the rail cars for the purposes of safety and efficiency. The ATC branch also ensures the safe operations of trains by maintaining vital equipment such as track circuits, over 14,000 vital relays, and automatic speed command systems, which are housed in the 49 train control rooms across the rail system. On the wayside, ATC maintains 297 switch machines, 76 train stops, and 513 signals. In summary, the ATC system controls the safe movement of the passenger rail vehicles throughout the MARTA rail system. Next slide. Our track and structures branch is headed by Devin Asgar. Devin has over 17 years with MARTA and 20 years total experience in operations, track maintenance, and management to include New York Transit. Devin manages a staff of 90 employees. Next slide, please. The branch of track and structures is comprised of three major units: track inspection and support, track maintenance, and structural engineering and inspection. These groups are responsible for MARTA's 104 miles of track and associated equipment. The track inspection and support branch provides track inspection services, material management, preventive maintenance, as well as track and vehicle equipment repair and maintenance services. The track maintenance branch implements the majority of the track maintenance and repair programs, including ballasted track maintenance, direct fixation track maintenance, contact rail maintenance, and running rail maintenance and turnout maintenance. The structural engineering and inspection branch provides structural inspection services, including the inspection of aerial structures, tunnels, right-of-way structures, and passenger station structures. This branch also furnishes conceptual and engineering support for special projects. The efforts of our structural and engineering inspection group ensure the strength and serviceability of our rail structures, as well as the safety of our patrons that travel on our bridges and through our tunnels each day. Next slide, please. MOW KPIs. Each branch has numerous KPIs that are tracked and analyzed to improve performance. These KPIs all roll up to drive MOW's overall KPIs to measure our performance. Next slide. Rail service delays. This is a monthly average of delays related to ATC, EP&E, and track and structures. This KPI is a direct effect on our customers and experience and gives us an overall picture of our maintenance efforts and where we need to improve. Our goal is maintaining less than 60 service delays per month for MOW. As you can see, in the months of August and February of 21, we exceeded this mark. In August, we experienced a major feeder cable on the North Line. Georgia Power has since repaired that cable fault. And in February, we had some extreme weather swings that resulted in increased switch machine failures. As the temperatures settled, the failures subsided. Next slide, please. PM compliance. That's the measure that helps us ensure that all MOW assets are maintained per manufacturer and or regulatory recommendations. This measure also provides an indication that each area is maintaining their assets to support a state of good repair, reduce failures, and support a safe and positive customer experience. MOW currently maintains a 98% PM compliance rating. Next slide, please. MOW overtime. MOW has exceeded our overtime budget for FY21, just as we has for the previous years. Next slide, please. This is mainly due to the number of capital projects supported by MOW. In FY21, we saw a significant increase in the amount of capital single tracking hours required for these projects. Every project that requires access to MARTA's wayside requires flagging support from MOW. We have addressed this issue with a better forecasted overtime budget that now accounts for our operating and capital overtime for FY22 and are working with HR to fill our current vacancies. Next slide, please. Talk a little bit about our capital programs. Next slide. Track renovation phase 4, or TR4 as you may know it. This project will replace switch steel and fasteners on the east, west, and north lines. It will replace 190,000 linear feet of running rail throughout the system, replace 26,000 concrete ties, and replace 50,000 rail fasteners. This project is currently in construction at 35% completion and estimated to close out in fall of 2026. Next slide, please. The traction power and substation equipment upgrade. This project will renovate or replace MARTA's 40-year-old traction power substations and gap breaker stations equipment throughout the authority. Phase 1 will focus on 5 locations to include Midtown, 5 Points East-West, 5 Points North-South, Candler Park, and the WPX gap breaker station on the west line. This project is currently in the final stage of the planning phase and is near ready to commence with the first step of the procurement phase. Next slide, please. Future project. This is the vital relays with processors. This project will replace the train controlled vital logic relays with vital processors, replace obsolete track circuit modules with updated modules utilizing present day technology. And it's still in the initiation phase with research currently being done to clearly define the complete scope of the project. Next slide, please. Wayside fires. Due to our electrified third rail system, we tend to experience a higher number of wayside fires. Most of these fires are usually caused by third rail arcing that ignites nearby pine straw or debris. The remaining fires are caused by our traction power or our negative return current finding its way to earth ground and burning the current path to that ground. For calendar year 21, we have taken several steps to reduce the number of wayside fires. Next slide, please. To combat our fires caused by arcing, we've increased our wayside cleaning efforts. Our track walkers walk the system twice a week and report any areas that have excessive debris or pine straw. Our facilities maintenance group have purchased 2 industrial vacuums that will be deployed to clean up our station platforms and trackways. As you can see right here under the industrial vacuum heading, that picture right there is the vacuum that's purchased to clean up our trackways. Our track department is currently using an on-track vacuum to clean up the areas with heavy pine straw and debris outside the station platforms. The on-track vacuum here, as you see, we use that outside the station platforms in between the stations where we have heavy pine straw, and that vacuum is used to pick up the bulk of that pine straw. The rest of it is done by hand with rakes. And we are also speaking to a third rail supplier about a redesigned third rail end approach that may reduce arcing. So at the bottom of your screen here, you can see the current design of our third rail. When our train passes by and a collector chute comes in contact with that third rail, there's burn marks at the end of it that causes some severe arc in some cases, and it catches on fire with the debris, as you can see on the floor, on the ground, sorry, with those leaves. We're right now speaking to an engineer with the suggested design here that gives us a well-designed third rail with a more gradual increase that will, make better contact with our third rail collector chute and reduce that heavy arcing to prevent these fires. Next slide, please. To address our grounding issues, the track department performs third rail insulator cleaning in our tunnel areas to prevent buildup that may conduct to ground. Our EP&E department performs contact rail testing where they isolate and test contact rail and traction power cables via megometer tests. And we still have work to do on our negative return system to develop a corrosion control program that performs monitoring and testing of this system. Next slide, please. MOW is committed to enhancing the customer experience and being a good steward to our riding public. We acknowledge that we have challenges with our aging infrastructure and are working to better maintain, repair, and replace it to ensure the safe and on-time travel of our patrons. I'd like to thank the committee for their time. Mr. Chairman, I defer back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. Do we have any questions from the committee members?
This is Jim. I just want to say, Ida, that was one of the best informational presentations I've ever received. So thank you for the preparation that you put into it and the way you delivered it.
Thank you, sir.
And this is Mrs. Hartage. I agree. That was wonderful. Thank you for the update.
Appreciate it.
Chairman, quick question.
Yes.
That's Bill Floyd. One of the problems that we've had over the past years has been keeping the grass cut along the track, but also trash and debris in the detention ponds that MARTA is responsible for. Is there anything going on with dealing with that issue, or is that part of this, or what?
That's not part of this directly, but that is part of MOW. So that the trash and debris, we've as I noted, we've addressed that with our 2 new vacuums that we've purchased. One is going to be focused directly on the station platforms. Our facilities maintenance group will take care of that. They're currently working on a schedule to address each station and prioritize stations depending on how severe the trash buildup is. So we're really working aggressively on that, as well as outside of the station platforms, our track and structures group. Like I said again in the presentation, we have that new vacuum truck that we're using to address debris outside of the station platforms. And of course, we are focusing on those areas that we have heavy pine straw and debris that causes those wayside fires. As far as the retention pond, I know we addressed one at Avondale. We had some issues at that retention pond, and we did put together an effort to clean up the Avondale storage area. And that area was inspected and passed city guidelines. So I know we're okay on that one. I'm not aware of any others, but I can't look into it and get that information to you.
Well, I mean, I'd appreciate it if you look at that. And then primarily the one I'm thinking about, it involves where the line coming into Decatur passes over Swanton Way there. Is it right before it gets into the station? There's a couple of, one of the problems that we have with those is that they're fenced. Nobody can get in them, which is the way it should be. I'm not questioning that, but they do get overgrown. Trash gets in them, and they are a problem. I'm not sure how many there are in the city, or MARTA has this issue with. But the other complaint that I've gotten over the years has been cutting the grass along the right of ways, MARTA right of ways. So anyway, that's just a comment, and it may not be right, the time now to worry about that. But anyway, those are just 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you, and we definitely will look into those areas and get some responses for you.
Thank you.
You, Mr. Matthew. I agree with everybody else. That was extremely informative and very well done. So we appreciate it. No other questions for that. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is another briefing. And that is going to be a bus maintenance update. So, Mr. Taylor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Good morning, Mr. Worthy, Ms. Abdul Salam, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to present a very high-level update for the bus maintenance department today. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 3. Next slide, please. With additions to the MARTA Board of Directors since the last bus maintenance update to the Operations and Safety Committee, today will be a great opportunity to talk about bus maintenance's responsibilities, our staff, fleet composition, past and present KPIs, our COVID-19 projects, new buses, and our Summerhill BRT project. And new bus deliveries especially will have a concentration on our new battery electric buses. Next slide, please. First of all, I would like to introduce the bus maintenance leadership team. The first three locations from left to right in the presentation, or in this particular slide, those are our operating facilities. This is where we do routine maintenance and preventive maintenance. The first location is Hamilton Boulevard. And this overseer is Dexter Canty. He has at least or a minimum of 23 years at MARTA. Our second location is the overseer is Kenneth Middlebrooks, who oversees the maintenance team at Laredo Bus Facility. He has 31 years of MARTA experience. David Marsh, who oversees the maintenance team at our Perry Bus Facility. He has 28 years of maintenance experience. And our fourth location, the overseer is Jesse Taylor, who oversees the heavy maintenance team at Browns Mill, and he has 30 plus years of maintenance experience. 21 of those years is with MARTA. The next individual is Scott Gates. He oversees our non-revenue maintenance team at Browns Mill, and he has 33 years of MARTA experience. And lastly, we have Eric Johnson. He has 40 years of bus experience, and he oversees our bus engineering department, our planning department. He manages all of our contracts as well. So we have many, many years of experience at our management level for our operating facilities and heavy maintenance facility. Lastly, again, my name is William Taylor, and I have 35 years of maintenance experience. 8 of those years was by way of Army Aviation, and 27 years is with the MARTA team. Next slide, please. Our organization consists of many crafts to keep our vehicles safe, reliable, and clean for bus service. We have 418 employees total budgeted, with 359 positions filled. With a 75% fill rate in our technician craft, we are extremely proud of the task we've completed, especially during the pandemic while understaffed. We'd like to thank HR and bus training for expediting recruiting and training efforts for vacant positions. We're currently in what's known as a dry industry, meaning all of us in the electromechanical world are competing for a limited number of qualified candidates in the same labor pools. However, HR has been finding ways of getting candidates through the MARTA doors. Next slide, please. MARTA has 539 active transit buses, 451 non-revenue vehicles, and 242 mobility vans. Our 3 bus operating facilities that perform routine service and repairs, Hamilton, Laredo, and Perry, that were mentioned earlier, they receive support from our heavy maintenance facility that perform major repairs to include major collision damage, component rebuilds, meaning that we overhaul certain components of our buses, and mid-life overhauls that are performed halfway through the useful life of a bus of 12 years or 500,000 miles. In other words, our mid-lifes are scheduled around 6 years, half of the useful life age, or 250,000 miles or greater, the useful life for mileage of a transit bus. Next slide, please. As you see on this slide, we run a lot of miles in our various fleets. This is why on-time performance for preventive maintenance and scheduled maintenance is so crucial in our department. For FY20, our bus fleet ran just over 34 million miles, and amazingly, our non-revenue fleet ran just over 5 million miles. Next slide, please. This is a slide of our fleet composition. As you can see, we have New Flyer, Gillick, and Grand West buses. We both have New Flyer diesel and CNG buses, Gillick diesel and CNG buses, and lastly, Grand West diesel buses. Next slide, please. These are the different lengths of our buses. As you can see, we're predominantly 40-foot, a 40-foot bus fleet, and that number totals 490 40-foot buses. Next slide, please. This slide is very near and dear to our department. This key performance indicators slide details our MDBF by fiscal year. As you can see, since FY7 in a positive trend yearly with our mean distance between failure performance. And right now, as you can see, we're currently around 24,000 miles in between failure. The second chart in this slide shows how we relate to some of our industry partners. And as you can see, we're just below Metro in Minneapolis, RTD in Denver, TriMet in Oregon, and we're just above some of the others listed in the slide. Certainly, we're not where we would like to be at this point, but we're certainly in a pretty good position. Next slide, please. How we get there, we certainly have a pretty good and comprehensive preventive maintenance program that's scheduled every 6,000 miles. The top graph shows that we are on time, or we have been on time for years with our preventive maintenance program. As you can see in the month of April, we have just a slight dip there, but let me explain. We certainly had some hard times with the pandemic as it relates to COVID-19. So those values that you see are very good with the exception of April, but this particular past month, we took a pretty good hit with about 12 techs being impacted by COVID-19. But on the other hand, our history precedes us. We've had two most recent triannual audits by the FTA. They identified our fleet and our operation being 100% on time with preventive maintenance. And we'll get back there. Our attendance is improving. And also, as we continue to fill those vacancies, you'll see that trend become positive again. The second chart we'll talk about is the follow-up on work orders on time. This simply means that after we perform a preventive maintenance inspection, we have about 5 days to get those defects repaired after the inspection has been performed. And as you can see, we're right about anywhere from right about 60% to 75% on time with that, and that is truly amazing due to the vacancies we have in our department and our bus technician ranks. Lastly, the off the lot performance is another indicator that tells us how well we're performing. As you can see, we're 99% plus off the lot on time for AM and PM pullout. So these indicators simply state that again, we're in pretty good shape despite the challenges we have with staffing. Next slide, please. This particular slide, we'll just talk about some of the projects that remain after the pandemic. It looks like it's taken the transition. Now that we've gotten past rear door entry and the yellow chains and everything we did initially to keep our buses safe while in service and our operators, we still have a few items remaining that continue to protect our operators and public. We have our bus operator shields remaining, mask dispensers, and we continue to cleanse and purify our air every 75 seconds. Next slide, please. All right, we have some new bus deliveries that we're all excited about in our department. The first 4 buses are articulated buses. Those buses right now are on the tail end of having post-delivery inspections and repairs completed. So once we get done fielding those vehicles, we look to have them in service soon. The second delivery of buses will be the 12 Gillick 40-foot CNG buses that are currently being built in Livermore, California as we speak. Those 12 buses are due delivery by end of June. And lastly, our 6 New Flyer 40-foot battery electric buses. The first one is here. We're getting ready to go through the fielding process of that vehicle. The other 5 vehicles we hope to receive by June 30th. New Flyer is having challenges with parts building new buses, so I would like to mention that just in case 1 or 2 buses may not get delivered on time. But we are challenging them to meet that deadline and go. Next slide, please. As mentioned, our battery electric bus pilot program consists of 6 electric buses, depot chargers, plug-in chargers at Laredo and Hamilton, and 1 opportunity charger that will be installed at our Edgewood Candler Park Transit Station. These buses will service an interline route number 2/102 from North Avenue Station to Edgewood Candler Park Station, and from North Avenue Station to our East Lake Transit Station. This program will provide information and data to help us improve and further develop our transit bus fleet management plan for zero emission buses. Next slide, please. And this slide just gives a few pictures of the interior and exterior of the electric bus. As you can see, the interior with the lime green seat inserts. This bus, as a matter of fact, has USB ports installed as well so that passengers can charge their smartphones or tablets. We do have charging rails up top for fast charging of the battery electric bus. And as you can see, we have a picture of some propulsion electronics to include those inverters and the rear battery strings. Anywhere you see orange, that is high voltage, just worth mentioning. Next slide, please. All right, so this is just a quick update on our charging infrastructure. These are the pictured on the left is the depot chargers. Those are the plug-in chargers for battery electric buses. Those are 150 kilowatt chargers. And then on the right, we have an opportunity charger that contacts the top of those charging rails mounted on the roof of the vehicle. And we can do our fast charging while in service with this opportunity charger. From about half of its charging capacity or state of charge, it could take maybe up to 12 minutes to fully charge this 466 kilowatt battery pack. And just mentioning, someone may ask, well, how long does it take to charge our buses at the depot? Well, to fully charge those, it would take probably about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So next slide, please. All right, so we're in the early stages of MARTA's Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit Route project, which will include public input, by the way. This 2.4 mile service to link MARTA's 5-point stations with Summerhill's neighborhood and the Atlanta Beltline's Southwest Trail. This BRT project will primarily operate and dedicated right away during peak periods with features that emulate rail fixed guideway services, including defined stations, short headways, bidirectional services, pre-board ticketing, platform level boarding, and separate branding. Bus features include traffic signal priority, rear door fare collection, 5-door boarding if required, interior bike racks, USB ports, and public Wi-Fi. MARTA has created an internal vehicle working group to evaluate and accesses the introduction of electric buses to the fleet to align with Summerhill's schedule. A consultant team will have the recommendations relative to interior compartment ergonomics, propulsion, and maintenance needs in late June during the Summerhill vehicle specifications. Mirroring fueling time, like our diesel and CNG buses, is essential, so we're exploring both overhead and induction charging. Induction charging could be efficient, as buses in service would get a charge at the end of each of the line stops, alleviating issues of range. Overhead, I'd like to mention though, overhead charging is the most prevalent in the industry. The plan is for MARTA is to electrify all bus routes. In summary, bus maintenance is in a good position, providing exceptional bus services to our region. Thank you. Mr. Worthy, I respectfully return the matter to you and the committee for questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. That was extremely informative. Really appreciate it, especially the KPI charts. I found those very interesting. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I have one. This is Al Pagano.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I saw your total number of buses. I'm just, I know there's not an exact number here, but what percentage of those, or how many buses are typically in operation during the week of the total fleet? I'm just curious, is that 80%? I know you hold some of those back for maintenance and backup and breakdowns and all of that, but with your 100+ routes, I'm curious how many buses are during the week are running on a regular basis, more or less.
Mr. Pun, you're right on it. Our peak service requires 80% of our fleet size. So the peak service, in other words, we would subtract 80% from that, and the other 20% would be our spare ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
William, are we engaged, and if you said this in your presentation, I'm sorry that it blew past me, but are we engaging the public in any way similar to the way we're engaging them on the interiors for the rail cars for the Summerhill BRT?
Yes, I mentioned earlier that we do have, we will have public input for the Summerhill BRT project. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My oversight.
No, you're welcome.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's Roberta.
Go ahead, Ms. Abdul Salam.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, I think it may have been about 6 slides back in our KPIs. If we can look at that for a minute, I had a question. I hope I didn't forget where it was. But there was, I think one more.
Okay, it's 2 slides, so go to the next one.
Go back, yeah. It's a lot of work.
Nope,
Well, I won't prolong the time. Yeah, that's not it. It was the one with the our graph going up, and then it dipped down for March and April of 2021. And I was wondering what that indicated, or was that just that we haven't measured it yet?
No, go right there. Stay. Slide number 10.
10.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that was the preventive maintenance on time. You're talking about that center chart, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and this is where we got hit pretty good with some COVID cases in our departments, especially at Laredo and Browns Mill. I think we had maybe about 12 techs out for COVID-19 during this time, and we're finally getting those back as we speak. So
Go ahead.
That was our biggest challenge there.
I heard you throughout the presentation refer to some staff vacancies. Are you actively recruiting right now, or what's happening with trying to make sure we fill the vacancies that you might have?
So we are actively recruiting HR. As a matter of fact, we have a standing monthly meeting with them on addressing how fast and where are we with filling those vacancies. And second to that, once we get them through the door, the challenge we have now is to get them through a 6-month training program for our fleet of buses. So we can stack them up and get them ready to go. The next challenge is expediting the training, which our training department is on board with us, helping us get these new candidates through the program.
Do you offer an internship program in your department?
We do have an apprenticeship program in our department. It's a 2-year program, so it's not as robust as the 6-month program.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Brother Chair, this is Rod Frierson. I have
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Frierson.
Mr. Taylor, so on the buses that are in the fleet, or the ones that be purchased, and maybe I haven't noticed it, but do they say that they're electric buses, CNG buses? Because I've had a few people who watch the buses say they're just polluting everything in Atlanta, not realizing that these buses are very, very efficient. Do they have a designation anywhere on there that says that they're electric or CNG buses?
Well, very good question. Our CNG buses do have blue CNG decals on the rear of those vehicles that indicate they're CNG. So it may not be as obvious that that is a CNG bus. That's something we could think about going forward. And then lastly, our electric bus that was pictured on slide, I think number 13. We have a message that says revealing Atlanta's first all-electric bus. So that is on the upper section of that vehicle, and hopefully we hope that they'll take notice of the Go Green, Go MARTA, and that will also be another indication that this is a zero-emission bus. So we're hoping our marketing scheme works for us.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for your time and effort in that presentation. We'll move along on the agenda to other matters. There is an informational only FY21 March KPIs in there for your review. But I also want to turn it over to General Manager Jeff Parker to update us on ARP funds and the ATL. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Worthy, and I apologize. I had intended on providing an update in the planning committee, but my phone was on mute and Mr. Pond didn't hear me, so I apologize. Just to bring everyone up to speed, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting between the MARTA staff and the ATL staff, as well as several board members were in attendance in that meeting. We committed to have some follow-up conversations. I had provided an update to the board at an earlier meeting about that. We've had a series of conversations between staff, and I just wanted to bring everyone up to speed. And I know Chris is here, and he'll probably want to weigh in on where we stand. You know, we really, one thing that I think is most important is that this ongoing dialogue has, you know, verified and confirmed that we have a lot of shared priorities with the ATL, particularly around regional projects, and you know, and I think that's important to recognize and speak to as we look to how we will allocate ARP funds. But one of the things that we've talked about is making sure that that MARTA has talked about with the ATL staff, is making sure that we maintain flexibility with the federal funds, with this 5307 funds, we've had some good dialogues around that, and that I believe that the funding that we have in front of us to advance projects will ensure that we are supporting, the ongoing shared priorities within the region, as well as the numerous other projects that are important to MARTA around the MARTA jurisdiction. So what Chris and I and staff have spoken about is, one is that there's a need for a split letter, which is the normal process that lays out how the monies that comes into the region, the 5307 money comes into the region. We're talking about the ARP funds right now. Will need to be issued. We're in agreement that we need to wait until we get some further dialogue from the FDA to make sure that nothing changes in the direction from the FDA. I don't anticipate that it will, but it seems to be reasonable to wait until we get the full direction from the FDA about eligible expenses and how we should prioritize this money. Chris has shared that the intention is once we're through that, and assuming that there's only minor changes, that they will issue a split letter and allow those funds to go directly to the recipients like MARTA without any strings attached that requires us to kind of limit our flexibility on the federal funding. I know from conversations with Chris that the ATL board will want to take an action related to laying out the importance of the priorities that we've talked about, and in particular for the projects within the MARTA jurisdiction, and the ATL will act on projects outside of the MARTA jurisdiction as well. The priorities that they want to focus on are I-285 top end, the Clayton County BRT, and the station rehabilitation program. And while these are important projects to us, along with some other extremely important projects to us, these are projects that we continue to invest our 1 cent sales tax to advance these projects, and working with our jurisdictional partners. So I think it's a good thing that the ATL has shared priorities for us. The other thing that we really realized in this dialogue is that we probably need to continue to work on a few specific issues, and that's a focus on developing some agreements. I would anticipate that there are probably agreements that when we've taken them on, that we would probably need to take to the board for the approval. And these are agreements around our future AFC project, the AFC 2.0, and how that will, become as the BREEZE system is, the regional fare collection system, and how that will support the need to have a regional fare, the work that the ATL is doing, the regional fare study, making sure that we're in support of that. We do have another agreement that we anticipate that we want to talk through farther, is an agreement around the I-285 top end project that not only would be constructed within the MARTA jurisdictions in Fulton and Cobb and DeKalb counties, but also has segments within Cobb County. So we want to make sure that we're efficiently advancing those projects and working collaboratively with our partner, the ATL, and Cobb County as well. So we're going to continue talking about that. We share on Georgia 400. We share the need to continue to support Fulton County's need and commitment to raise some local funds to close the funding gap on that. So we want to continue to see how we can support that project. And then, one of the conversations that we had in the meeting that I referenced that was about 2 weeks ago, we talked about roles and responsibilities for all of the kind of transportation partners in the organization. So we've agreed that we need to have some follow-up conversations about those roles and responsibilities. And then finally, I want to just point out that, MARTA staff continues to work with the ATL staff. One of the statutory requirements of the ATL is to develop a state bond list of priority projects so that the ATL can set some priorities and ultimately transmit those to the state for consideration in the state bond package. They've begun that process. We're working with them. We're going to make sure that the projects that are the board's priorities, our regional, our jurisdictional partners' priorities are incorporated into MARTA's requests for inclusion on that state bond list. It's called the priority project list that ultimately the ATL has to send to the governor's office for consideration in the state bond. So I think we've made sufficient significant progress in working through the ARP funding, making sure that we have a focus on maintaining flexibility in allocating this funds, recognizing that we have some shared vision around priority projects, some of which the ATL will intend on taking action to recommend that we advance those projects, and I think they're in alignment with our overall plans to advance projects within the region, and then a need to work on and put some details around some agreements on some key projects to make sure that those advance in a way that not only supports MARTA but supports the region as well. So that's a quick update. I'm very confident we're sort of in a good place around this. Before I offer to answer any questions, I think it'd be important to give Chris an opportunity to sort of share anything. We've been talking quite a bit about this, and I want to make sure I haven't either misrepresented or kind of left something out. So, Chris, do you have anything you want to add to the conversation?
Well, thanks, Jeff, and really to members of the MARTA board. I think the best way to show that I think we've really come to a good consensus path forward is to really just say ditto in terms of what Jeff said. Rather than go back through it, I would just want to point out one or two things to highlight. As Jeff already said, I think we've really come to a great place. We're looking at, and what I've been talking about with the ATL board members and what we're proposing to them is that the ATL's action is in the form of a recommendation. This way, we're talking about projects that, again, as Jeff said, or align with the plans that MARTA has, but equally as important, maintains flexibility by the allocation coming over directly to MARTA. So they have the flexibility because the only thing that we know that is constant is change. So the allocation of funds for ARP funds would come over to MARTA. We have these recommendations as it relates to projects that there's alignment between what ATL was thinking and those projects that MARTA was thinking. And MARTA and this board has the flexibility it needs as circumstances and things change to continue moving forward. So I really think it's a good place. And as to the agreements that Jeff mentioned, I think one of the valuable, I guess, lessons learned, if you will, is there's a lot we can do together if we're proactively working and talking. These agreements would be a culmination of some of these discussions, but the dialogue that we've been having over the past couple of weeks is equally valuable, equally important. And I know, and Robbie and I have talked, there was a lot of emotion, but I really think that in the end, the conversations have been invaluable, and we just want to find ways to keep those lines of communications open at the staff level where we've always been, but also at the board level. So thanks. I know that this is giving a little bit of feel from the Operations and Safety Committee, but I'm just appreciative of the partnership and just look forward to where we'll all collectively go from here.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, Jeff, Chris, I echo the fact that that is a very optimistic way to round out our meeting, and I appreciate both of y'all's efforts, and I know my fellow board members do as well. Does anybody have any questions for Jeff or Chris on that matter?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, if I may. It's Roberta.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead, Ms. Abdul Salam.
This question could be for both gentlemen, actually, but maybe Chris should take it first. Jeff mentioned 3 projects that ATL was going to, I guess, be principal on. Is that the right phrase? And so those 3 projects will be totally supported by ATL, or will there be a joint process with ATL and MARTA?
The 3 projects that Jeff mentioned, which is the I-285 top end, the Clayton BRT, and MARTA Station Rehab, are all MARTA projects. The joint piece, I would say, is really more around the top end, where there's a literally historic opportunity for MARTA, GDOT, ATL, Cobb, and Gwinnett to all participate. But what we anticipate is, since most of that project falls within MARTA, the agreement's about shared funding participation and the scope of design that would fall outside of MARTA and Cobb. But we see that as a MARTA-led project because so much of that project falls within MARTA's jurisdiction. The other 2, the Clayton Station Rehab, are all fully within MARTA's jurisdiction. So those are MARTA projects. What we're talking about the ATL saying is recommending that there is some ARP funds. And again, MARTA has the flexibility because that could change, but the advancement of those projects are regionally significant, but they are MARTA's projects to operate, manage, et cetera.
Okay. That answers it. I see Jake concurring. Jeff is concurring. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from board members to Jeff and Chris?
Mr. Chairman, a quick question.
Sure, go ahead, Mayor.
Chris, you mentioned ARP funds, and of course, I'm interested in how we might approach that with cities and counties and the state. Is that the realm you're talking about? All ARP funds, or just a particular entity, state or county?
We're talking because the 3 projects were the MARTA projects, but there are other projects in Cobb and Gwinnett. Basically, the ATL board is recommending that ARP funds be used towards these projects. But again, one of the clear things I want everyone to be clear on is, as Jeff put it, there's no strings on the dollars. There's a variety of reasons that Jeff and I have been talking about where MARTA may end up identifying other funds to advance these projects. And so we want to make sure we maintain the flexibility for MARTA to do that if the situation arises. But based on the information we have in front of us today, there's alignment to the use of ARP funds for these projects. But that's really the key distinction why this is a recommendation and it doesn't limit flexibility for MARTA to react as literally as these projects become more clearly defined and other opportunities may present themselves.
Okay, well, my only comment is
Let me just add, because I think what you're asking is the ARP funding that the federal, the ARP bill that the federal government passed includes a lot of funding sources. What we're talking about is the slice of the ARP funds that are coming through the Federal Transit Administration to the region through their 5307 program and then sub-allocated to, to the transit operators. So we're not talking about any ARP funds that's going directly to a county, directly to the state of Georgia or any other entity, but just specifically this one funding program within that ARP bill.
100% concur with Jeff on that.
Okay, is that a decision then not to pursue the ARP funds that cities and counties are getting?
It doesn't.
No, this conversation really just speaks to the 5307 funds,
okay,
which by the 5307 program come to the region, flow through the designated recipient, which is the ATL, and then the discussion here is around how what's the mechanism to disperse that to the transit operators. So really not talking about that wider, consideration.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brother Chair, this is Rod Friars, and
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Friars.
I guess I have more of a comment also. So I'm glad to hear that this has moved forward in a reconciliatory way. But what I see as the possibility is that once again, when we start talking about trying to implement these types of transportation projects, when everyone is working together to take down the barriers, and that's the part that I am looking forward to us doing. I think that the funding is a great part of it, but really what I see is sometimes it's just the bureaucracy of it or the things that keep delaying projects from moving forward as getting in our way. If we all can remove those things, these things can happen hopefully in my lifetime, but surely we want to see them happen so that people can realize that what they're putting into this, they can actually see it being manifest. And that is really what I'm glad to hear that y'all talking about. And that's why I think that's important for the ARC to be the flagship of a lot of these things. They are then the regional opportunity for us to do these things. So I'm glad to see that we're moving in that direction. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's Russell McMurray. Have the floor.
Go ahead, Russell.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend both Jeff and Chris, my colleagues, for working forward on this issue. And as you've heard, it sounds like there's been a lot of collaboration between the ATL board and the MARTA board, of which I get to serve on both. So I've sort of understood this discussion from both sides from a unique perspective. And I would say today, based on the conversation and my conversations with Jeff and Chris both, is that we are in a better position today than we were just a few weeks ago, as moving Georgia forward and Metro Atlanta forward collectively, just the same as Rod just talked about, as working together in a truly a regional nature. And obviously, I have some personal interest in the 285 Top End Express, as well as the 400 corridor Jeff talked about, because this, again, as MARTA has the biggest footprint, the biggest impact on those corridors, but they do extend, 285 extends outside the MARTA boundary. Utilizing the ARP funds, as talked about, allows, again, MARTA, who has the biggest impact, to do some work that's outside of that without, violating any of the MARTA rules or what have you, dealing with the jurisdiction. So I applaud the effort thus far and know that GDOT is a partner with the ATL and MARTA on these things where we interface and have these opportunities. And I see it just as the best outcome that I probably could have ever guessed going into this when the word ARP showed up. So I just, again, this is a very good conversation. And I just wanted to give that affirmation to the MARTA board of how important this conversation has been. And to Roderick Fiverson's comments there, it's about this will be bigger than what we all thought we could do initially. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and again, commend both MARTA board and ATL board for working collaboratively together to get to some great recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks, Russell.
Mr. Chair, may I ask?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Chairwoman Scott.
I would like to say this is more of a comment than a question, and that is thank you both for arriving at an amicable solution. And I look forward to what we're going to do, because I believe we'll do great things in transportation.
I
Well,
think
thank you,
that
Madam
that's,
Chair.
I think that's a
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a perfect way to adjourn the Operations and Safety Committee meeting. I agree completely, and we'll adjourn and turn it over to Chairman Friars.
Thank you, Brother Worthy. At this moment, I'd like to call the Business Management Committee meeting to order. Can you hear me clearly? I'm good. Mrs. Huff, can you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Roberta Abdul-Salam,
Present.
Robert Ash, Stacy Blakely,
Present.
Jim Durrett,
Present.
William Floyd,
I'm here.
Roger Frierson,
Present.
Ryan Glover, Frida Hardage,
Present.
Russell McMurray, Al Pond,
Present.
Catherine Powers,
Present.
Rita Scott,
Present.
Reginald Snyder,
Present.
Christopher Tomlinson, Thomas Worthy.
Present.
There are 12 board members present.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Huff. The first item on the agenda is approval of the April 29th Business Management Committee meeting. Can I get a motion in second?
Pond moves for approval.
Second, Roberta.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Are there any abstentions to meeting minute? Are there any objections? Hearing none, the meeting minutes have been approved. The second item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of consulting services for the group benefit plan. FP P 46683. LaShondra Dawkins, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chairman Frierson, Business Management Committee members, Mr. Srinath, and Mr. Parker. Thank you. I am pleased to be before you today to request your recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of consulting services for group benefits plans, RFP P 46683, to the Siegel Company. Next slide. This contract has a 5-year term consisting of a 3-year base and 2 one-year options for a total of $1.5 million funded with local operating funds. This is an hourly fee-based contract and not a fixed fee for service. So the $1.5 million represents the maximum amount that would be able to be paid on this contract. This is a recurring contract, and the contract includes a 10% DBE goal. Next slide. By way of background, on January 8, 2021, notice to proponents were sent to 10 vendors for the procurement of consulting services for group benefits plans. Notice of request for proposals were advertised on January 12th, February 2nd, and February 15th in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and on MARTA's website. 63 firms retrieved the online solicitation and or purchased the CD. On the proposal deadline date and time of February 22nd, 2021, 7 proposals were received. 5 of the 7 were deemed responsive and shared with the Source Evaluation Committee on March 19th. Those firms include Benalytics, CBiz, PRM Consulting Group, Relation Insurance Services, and the Siegel Company. The Source Evaluation Committee reviewed and evaluated the proposals based on the established criteria. After the Source Evaluation Committee's initial review and evaluation, the committee met on March 31st and determined 2 proposals would be in the competitive range and invited those 2 proponents to provide a best and final offer. The firms were Benalytics and the Siegel Company. Next slide. This slide illustrates the 7 proposals that were received. The Alliant Benefit Services and Gallagher Benefit Services proposals were the 2 that were deemed non-responsive. The remaining 5 were prepared and sent to the Source Evaluation Committee as indicated. And as you can see, Benalytics and the Siegel Company were invited to submit their best and final offer. Next slide. Consistent with the MARTA Act, the committee determined that it is in the best interest of the authority to execute a contract with the Siegel Company. The Siegel Company was founded in 1939 and has been an employee-owned company since 1978. They are headquartered in New York, and the Siegel Company has an Atlanta office that will provide the services needed by MARTA. Siegel has previously provided reliable services to MARTA as the principal insurance consultant and most recently supported our negotiations with our current insurance carriers. Next slide. As unanimously selected vendor with the highest overall technical score, Siegel will support the effective and optimized management and design of MARTA's group health plans and programs. Key services to be provided include plan design analysis and recommendations to support MARTA's organizational goals of fiscal responsibility. The consultant will conduct annual claim cost forecasts. They will provide negotiation support for annual premium rate renewals and stop-loss coverage, and labor negotiation support through benefit-related financial modeling. Next slide. Through this procurement, Siegel will replace our former vendor with anticipated enhancements in the service level. The Source Evaluation Committee determined, based upon the quality of proposals, that Siegel would provide a superior service to MARTA. A key consideration during the procurement process were the goals and objectives as to the group health plans that this vendor would be engaged to support. The MARTA Health Plan is in a posture much like the agency for optimizing transformation and preparation for a future that includes growth. This is not a health program that needs to maintain the status quo. We need to consider unique, emerging trends that allow us to meet the needs of our employees while meeting MARTA's financial objectives. Siegel demonstrated a high level of subject matter expertise in the team that was presented to service the MARTA account. The team reflected greater breadth and depth in the areas such as actuarial services and pharmaceutical expertise that directly align to cost containment and/or savings in plan design. Additionally, Siegel has prior experience with MARTA's group benefits plans that will likely eliminate inefficiencies in the provision of services. Next slide. So in closing, I want to restate our request that the Business Management Committee recommend to the Board of Directors approval of our resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of consulting services, RFP P46683, to the Siegel Company. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, can I get a motion and a second for the resolution?
Move approval, Jim.
Harder, just second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Questions? Any comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, I call the question. All those who are abstaining from the vote, are there any objections to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Thank you very much, LaShondra. LaShondra is on the next item on the agenda, a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of employee voluntary benefit program, RFP P48735. LaShondra Dawkins, you have the floor, AGM, Human Resources.
Thank you, sir. Again, I'm before you to request your recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of employee voluntary benefits, RFP P48735. The voluntary benefits program was established at MARTA in 2016. Next slide. MARTA's Employee Voluntary Benefits Program provides employees a disciplined method to purchase goods and services through the convenience of payroll deduction on a post-tax basis. The employees who are eligible for this are those that are full-time and part-time permanent employees, and there's no financial liability to MARTA. And the customer service management is maintained by the vendor. The various types of goods and services include electronic equipment, computers, household goods, vacations, as you will see later in the presentation. Next slide. This contract has a 5-year term consisting of a 3-year base and 2 one-year options. The program will incur no implementation costs or participation fees for MARTA. And this is a recurring contract, and the contract includes a 10% DBE goal. Next slide. The list that you see before you are our current providers. Purchasing Power, which provides options like goods and services, including the electronic equipment, computers, household goods, vacations. Prepaid legal services are offered through ARAG, and pet insurance, long-term care, home and auto insurance is currently offered through MetLife. Next slide. This slide is just to provide an historical utilization information for you as you consider this solicitation request. As you can see, over the last 3 calendar years, we've had employees utilizing approximately $4.9 million as it relates to the offerings of Purchasing Power, $487,928 for the prepaid legal services, and the life insurance products under MetLife, right over $800,000. So the total utilization over the last 3 years has been right over $6.2 million. Next slide. So in closing, I want to restate our request that the Business Management Committee recommend to the Board of Directors approval of our resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of the Employee Voluntary Benefit Program.
Thank you, LaShondra.
I move approval.
And I'll second it.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Okay, questions by the MARTA board? I want to say I'm glad to see that this is a benefit that the employees are using. I think it's great for them and for all the employees to have something like this that they can use. Once again, this is one of those benefits that we offer that I'm glad to see that we're. Are there any questions from the board members? Hearing none, I call the question. Are there any abstentions to the resolution? Are there any objections to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Thank you, LaShondra. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA contactless smart card fare media, IFB B47281. Denise Walker, Manager of Revenue Administration. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Frierson, Vice Chairman Durrett, Mr. Parker, Mr. Shreenaw, and Business Management Committee members. My name is Denise Walker. I'm the Manager of Revenue Administration. Today, I will be presenting the resolution requesting the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA contactless smart card fare media, IFB B47281. Next slide, please. The contract covers a 2-year base period with 3 one-year options for a total of 5 years. The option years will support the authority going forward as we continue to explore new technologies in providing fare media options to the general public. Next slide, please. The cost of fair media is offset by surcharges collected when media is purchased by the general public. There is a $2 surcharge for extended use cards and a surcharge of $1 for limited use tickets. Next slide, please. Extended use cards and limited use tickets were two separate line items, and bidders were not required to bid on both line items to be considered responsive. Next slide, please. The notice to potential bidders was sent to 12 vendors in August 2020. The original bid deadline was extended from September 16, 2020 until October 21st due to COVID-19. 64 firms retrieved the online solicitation and/or purchased the CD. Next slide, please. 6 bids were received at the bid opening on October 22nd, 2020. Bids were received from Ask Intag LLC, doing business as Paragon ID, Confidex Limited, Magnetic Ticket and Label, Nagels North America LLC, Giesecke and Deverant, and Electronic Data Magnetics Incorporated. Next slide, please. Revenue Operations recommends Ask Intag LLC, doing business as Paragon ID, with the lowest bid of $3,188,250 as the supplier for 3.9 million extended use cards. They are the current supplier of extended use cards for MARTA's automated fare collection system. There are no issues with their cards, and they continue to work well in the system. Next slide, please. Revenue Operations recommends Ask Intag LLC, doing business as Paragon ID, with the lowest bid of $1,537,200 as the supplier of 12.6 million limited use tickets. With over 50 years experience, Paragon ID is a leading manufacturer of access control solutions such as contactless tickets and smart cards for the public transportation market. Next slide, please. Consistent with the MARTA Act and sound procurement practices, it is in the best interest of the authority to enter into a contract with Ask Intag LLC, doing business as Paragon ID, for the procurement of extended use cards and limited use tickets. Revenue Operations respectfully request your recommendation of approval of this resolution, IFB B47281, the procurement of MARTA contactless smart card fare media. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank
Can I get a
you.
motion? Can I get a motion?
Alpine moves for approval.
Hardage seconds.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Are there any questions from my board members concerning the resolution?
Chair Frierson, this is Stacy Blakely. I have a question.
Yes, Stacy.
Denise, what is the DBE percentage on this one?
It was 0%.
And why is that?
Most of these firms manufacture outside of the United States.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board member?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Roberta, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Roberta.
Board Member Blakely just brought it to mind. Are there not any companies that manufacture here within the United States?
The only one that was a bidder was the Electronic Data Magnetics, and I believe they were the highest bidder on the cards. They did not bid on the tickets.
Okay.
And in April, I received word in April of this year, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board members? Okay, hearing that, I will call the question. All those who abstain from this resolution, do we have any abstentions? Do we have any objections to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Thank you, Denise. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of CCTV and enterprise network switches, IFB B48023. Mr. Kirk Talbert, AGM Technology, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman Frierson, Vice Chair Durrett, Mr. Parker, Mr. Srinath, and members of the Business Management Committee. This morning, I would like to request approval of a resolution authorizing the purchase of 76 network switches to support the CCTV network and train control rooms. Procurement conducted an invitation for bids. There were 56 firms that retrieved information. There were 2 firms which submitted. Both were considered responsive, and we're requesting approval to grant the contract to Converge One in the amount of $672,622.04 for these network switches. These will be replacing end-of-life equipment that is currently running the CCTV and train control rooms. This concludes my brief on this request for approval.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Can I get a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
I move.
Second.
Pond second.
Okay. Thank you. It's been properly moved and second. Do we have any questions from the board? Any comments? Hearing none, I call the question. All those who abstain from the resolution, are there any abstentions? Are there any objections to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Thank you very much, Kirk. Kirk is on the next item on the agenda. This is a resolution authorizing a modification and a contractual authorization for the DocuSign licenses, LOA L40203. Mr. Kirk Talbot, you have the floor again.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, Mr. Parker, Mr. Srinath, and members of the committee. This is a request to approve a resolution to extend the existing contract that we have with DocuSign for a period of 3 years and to add funds worth $412,573.50. DocuSign is the software that we utilize at MARTA that allows us to do electronic signatures and has allowed us to accelerate the process and do remote approval of multiple document types and processes. This extension will allow us to continue to utilize this technology to allow us to work through the current pandemic situation and continue to utilize these improved process automation. In addition, this expansion will allow us to incorporate electronic signatures into our invoice processing system for the more MARTA expansion, which will allow us to process invoices and documentation more rapidly and more efficiently. So the ask is for an extension of the existing DocuSign contract for 3 years and to add $412,573.50 through operating funds for the next 3 years.
This is Jim. I'll move approval.
This is Rita, I'll second.
Okay, it's been properly moved second. Are there any questions concerning this resolution? Hearing none, all those who object to the resolution? Are there any abstentions to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Thank you very much, Kirk.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Resolution approving revisions to the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct. Elizabeth O'Neill, Chief of Counsel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Frierson, and good morning, members of the Business Management Committee. I'm here today to ask for your approval of a resolution to revise the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct for MARTA. Next slide, please. The first section that we're talking about is Section 13, contracts involving former employees. Next slide. Thank you. So currently, the provision regarding MARTA doing business with entities that employ former employees is a broad prohibition for a 1-year period from the time the employee leaves their employment with MARTA. MARTA is prohibited from doing business with that entity. The concerns that have been raised through the years regarding this provision is that it is overly restrictive.
It has been the code section that has involved the majority of the ethics board decisions, and which then result in requests for waivers to you all as the MARTA board of directors. It also does not take into consideration the type of job that the former employee may have held. And really this provision is to not have employees use knowledge gained in their capacity as a MARTA employee for future enrichment. So, for our represented force, the likelihood that that would restrict them from future employment seemed to be fairly unlikely. Next slide, please. So what the revision that is being proposed would do would prohibit the authority from entering into a contract with an entity that employs a former MARTA employee when it violates certain limitations. If a former employee was involved in the procurement of a contractor, then there would still be the 12-month limitation of MARTA doing business with that entity. That particular employee would never committed to work on the project for which they served on the source evaluation committee or for which they may have utilized contractual modifications. And then the former employee would not be utilized on any MARTA project for 1 year after employment. And this would address those concerns so that it would be limited to those employees with knowledge and influence. It would narrow and just about eliminate the request for waivers. And there still would be that waiting period to perform MARTA work. Now, this provision or revision, proposed revision, had been discussed in a work session with you all several months ago. And I think a couple of the questions that were engendered about revising this particular section was to have the current Board of Ethics members weigh in on how they felt about this. They did do so and thought that the proposed revision was warranted and that it would, again, eliminate the need for waivers being issued by you all as the board of directors, because really to have a code of ethics and then say you're waiving the provisions of it is not a best practice. So that is the first section that we're seeking revision. Next slide, please. The other provisions really are interrelated. Section 18 is the duty to act, which covers the requirement that if somebody believes that they may have a conflict of interest or an issue that would be a code violation, that they bring that to the attention of the appropriate folks. Next slide, please. And what we're asking currently, this Section 18 requires that inquiries regarding these possible code violations would go to Chief Counsel, who would then forward them to the Board of Ethics. What we're proposing is to have the request forwarded initially to a internal MARTA Ethics Committee, which would be composed of members of the legal, audit, and finance departments that would be appointed by the general manager. And then next slide, please. Section 19 regarding the Board of Ethics. Next slide. What we are requesting here is that currently the Board of Ethics is empowered to render advisory opinions, to receive and hear complaints, to make investigations, and to make recommendations to the Board of Directors regarding potential disciplinary actions for violations of the code. What we're proposing is that the Board of Ethics, really to clarify their role as an advisory committee and not a decision-making body, that would reside in you all as the board of directors. And this revision is being requested to really bring it in compliance with a DeKalb County court decision that really led to DeKalb County changing their ethics structure, in that the decision held that the entity responsible for making ethics determinations should be one that is appointed by the governing authority. And so this would clarify that you all, as the board of directors, are really the group that has the final determination in ethics regarding ethics violations, and that while we maintain an internal ethics committee as well as a second level of review in the board of ethics, that they would both be advisory entities and that the board of directors would remain the final authority. And so those are the sections that we are requesting to revise. The entire language of the proposed revisions should have you should have received in the attachment to this resolution. So I would respectfully request that the resolution authorizing these revisions to the Code of Ethics be made to the Board of Directors. Thank you.
I'll move
Thank you very-
approval of the resolution.
Okay, Durham has approved. Mr. Pond has seconded. Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Are there any discussions by the board member?
That was not Mr. Pond that seconded.
Ms. Roberta.
Okay, Ms. Roberta seconded. Okay.
Yeah, Roberta.
All right. It's been moved in second. Are there any questions from the board members?
Chairman
Mr. Chairman.
This is Stacey Blakely.
Yes, Ms. Stacy.
Quick question regarding the actual board member makeup. Liz, on the slide, it said that they were appointed by the GM, but in the actual documentation, it looks like, you know, different bodies, the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, and other entities are appointing their respective person. Can you clarify?
Yes, ma'am. So the group that is appointed by the general manager is the internal ethics committee that would be made up of staff members. We will still maintain the board of ethics as the next level of review, and that will continue to be the appointments that are made by the various entities that are listed in the code. So that is just, we're just creating a step even before the board of ethics, which is the internal ethics committee.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the board members?
Mr. Frierson, hi, this is Reggie Snyder. I have one question for Liz.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Reggie.
Thank you, sir. Liz, just to follow up on that last part with the ethics committee, and you mentioned that there would be a change to make the board of directors essentially a final arbiter of those kind of issues. Does that mean that we will get, I guess, the ethics recommendation submitted to us kind of on an ongoing basis, assuming this proposal is passed?
If it would be, yes, so the Board of Ethics, if it is asked for an opinion on, you know, if somebody comes and brings a question that is not resolved internally, that they then render an advisory opinion, then that advisory opinion of the Board of Ethics would be submitted to you all, along with, you know, various other documentation regarding a particular question or issue.
Okay, and then we would make our final decision based on the advisory opinion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, just want to be clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions from the board members? Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I call the question concerning the resolution. Are there any abstentions to the resolution? Are there any objections to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution of the MARTA Board of Directors appointing a member of the Fulton Technology and Energy Enhancement Authority. Melissa.
Yes,
Chief
thank
of Staff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. So in this past General Assembly, Representative Misha Maynor passed a bill, House Bill 762, that creates the Fulton Technology and Energy Enhancement Authority. It's the first time that the state has created a new authority since they created MARTA. And what this authority is intended to do is to identify, target, alleviate specific elements relating to the underdevelopment of technology and energy, sustainable energy, renewable energy in areas within Fulton County that are to the west of the Georgia Tech campus. It's not more specific than that than that description, although it does provide also for zip codes that meet the criteria where graduation rates are low, and the energy burden is 30% higher than is the average for the region. The bill also calls for 7 board members. One of those is appointed by the MARTA board. The others, one is a member from the Fulton Development Authority. One is from the Georgia Tech Partnership for Inclusive Innovation. One is an ARC appointee that has experience in finance and investment. One is from the Fulton County Commission with an economic development background. Another from Fulton County Commission with a renewable energy background. And lastly, the 7th appointee is from the General Assembly members whose district this impacts with expertise in renewable energy. So we come to you today asking for you to appoint Collie Greenwood. I've had conversation with Representative Maynor a couple of times, one during the session about the bill and then one most recently, and ask her specifically if her intent was to have a member of the MARTA board be appointed to this. And she said no and asked for a staff member who could really engage and help think about the ways that MARTA can play a substantive role in this authority. And so as we talked about it with staff, it seems that the most likely involvement for us is possible second pilot of our electric bus program down one of the corridors in the district, likely down Boone Boulevard. And so for that reason, we would recommend that the board appoint Collie Greenwood, who Deputy General Manager of Operations and who has been leading the authority's efforts on the electric bus. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I think you guys have the resolution there in front of you.
Mr.
So
Chair,
we don't need a motion for this. Am I correct? There's no motion needed?
No, there would be.
It is a resolution. So is that
right?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. So I do believe we need to have a motion in second. Is that my understanding?
I'm
Yes,
happy
that's correct.
I'm happy to lose the support of Collie Greenwood for this position, but I have a question.
Okay.
Second also. Thank you.
Okay. So it's been moved by Mayor Floyd and seconded by.
Yes, happy to do it.
Okay. And seconded by Hartridge. Thank you. Okay, it's been properly moved in seconds. Okay, question, Mr. Floyd, you have a question?
Listen, if we could not appoint a board member to this, I believe the MARTA Act restricts MARTA board members being ability to serve on another commission. Am I wrong in that?
This is Liz again. No, you're correct, Mayor Floyd.
Okay, so a MARTA board member would not be eligible for this appointment. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? Okay.
Yeah, that would violate that section of the MARTA Act.
Okay, well, I'm happy to support Collie for this.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Floyd. Any other comments or questions from the board members?
I'd like to make a comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I want to say that this legislation that was passed is going to be a great opportunity for Atlanta, for Fulton County, and for the district. And I think Collie Greenwood would be a great asset to represent MARTA. The bill itself is 18 pages. It talks about, in case any of you would like to actually look it up and take a read, it's House Bill 762 that passed this legislative session. And I think it's going to be a great asset and would give us also great presence in the community. It was sponsored by the legislators from the 56th district, the 65th district, the 57th district, the 52nd district, and the 95th district, and signed on by other state house members. So I'm excited that the bill passed. I think it's a great opportunity for MARTA to support the community. And that's my comment.
Thank you very much, Chair Scott. Are there any other comments from the board members?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one more thing in there, which is just a little bit of color, which is that during the session, when we first heard about this, we were working with Allie Kelly and the Ray. They're very involved in this, and through our electric bus work, we'll be working with the Ray and with Rep Maynor and this new energy authority to see if there are more, better, faster ways that we can move to sustainable energy.
Okay.
Like, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
like
go right ahead.
those of my colleagues, I definitely second that emotion. I think that Collie Greenwood would be an excellent choice and appointment for this purpose.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ms. Roberta, okay. Are there any other questions for the board members? All right, hearing none, I call the question. All those who are in opposition of the resolution, are there any abstentions? Are there any abstentions to the resolution? Hearing none, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a resolution to approve the operations and capital budgets for FY 2022. Raj, Chief Financial Officer, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chairperson and Vice Chair Durrett, and other
Thank you.
members of the Business Management Committee. I'm going to provide a brief summary on the fiscal year 22 proposed operating and capital budgets, as well as a summary on the public hearings and public engagements regarding the proposed budget we have had. You can move to the next slide, please. Here are the underpinnings of the fiscal year 22 budget. It supports MARTA's strategic priorities. It does support updated service level. As the board knows, we restarted about 50 routes on April 24th of this year, which we had either cut or reduced as a result of COVID-19. And the budget for fiscal year 22 does support the updated service levels, which have already begun. It does provide financial stability, not just for fiscal year 22, but with a longer term view. And it advances capital program, not just a state of good repair project, but also provides for some regional high priority projects to proceed. Next slide. From a budget timeline standpoint, we briefed the board in a work session on May 5th, followed that with 2 public hearings on May 10th and May 11th. I will provide more details on the public hearings as well as the feedback later in the presentation. And today being May 27th, this is a briefing for the Business Management Committee. And finally, it will go to the full board on June 10th for adoption. Next slide, please. One more. Thank you. This pie chart illustrates the various sources of revenues that fund our operating budget. I'm going to focus on the top 3. Number 1 is the operating sales tax, which provides for about $263 million at 47% revenues. The second one at $73 million or 13% is the federal formula funds. And the third one at about 11% or $60 million of the passenger pay revenues. Again, this information has not changed since it was presented to the board, the work session on May 5th, as well as the same information was presented to the public at the public hearing session. So the final revenues are $559.1 million. Next slide, please. And these are the proposed operating expenditures for fiscal year 22, and the total is $557.1. And in the top category, the labor, at roughly 2/3 of all of the operating expenditures are $360 million. And when I say labor, the cost includes salaries, wages, benefits such as pension and healthcare. And the second largest component of the expenditures are other contracted services, which include information technology license fees, fare collection equipment maintenance, and other maintenance facilities expenses. And the third largest expense category is the mobility service at $38 million, 7%, which is our para transit service. Next slide, please. So this is a comparison of our fiscal year 22 proposed budget to how we did actually in fiscal year 20, as well as how we compare with our budget for fiscal year 21. So the last column is the proposed budget. So the overall revenues are $559.1 million, and net expenses are projected to be $557.1, leaving us a pretty modest surplus of $2 million, with in a sense of a balance. Next slide, please. If we can advance one more, please. Again, this pie chart represents all of the sources for our capital program. It's a comprehensive one, which means it not only includes sources for our state of good repair, that's from the core penny, but also for illustrate for the city of Atlanta, as well as for Clayton County. And the total sources are $991.4 million on this. And again, this has not changed since information was presented to the board at the work session on May 5th. And similar information was presented at the public hearings on May 10th. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, thank you. And thank you. I think I was trying to move ahead one more before realizing. Okay. This pie chart illustrates the uses of that capital revenues for what expenses we're using it for. About $481 million are used for the state of good repair needs, $60 million for Clayton County more MARTA projects, and $50 million for City of Atlanta more MARTA project, and about $158 million for debt service on a debt we have previously issued. Again, just to state the obvious, the information has not changed since it was presented at the public hearing, as well as the board work session on May 5th. Next slide, please. This is a 10-year look on our capital program. The first column, which is the fiscal year 22, is the budget for which we are seeking approval for. And this is just in the represented in numerical fashion what I spoke on the pie charts on the previous two slides. So overall sources of revenue, as you can see in the middle of the slide, is $991.4 million, and the total uses are $749.2 million. That consists of $639 million for state of good repair, including debt service, and $50 million for more MARTA at the city of Atlanta, and 60 on the more MARTA project for Clayton County, for a total of 749. So that leaves us with a balance of $242 million, which will be carried over to future years. Next slide, please. We're going to provide a very brief background on the public hearings we have had. I'm not going to read through all of the things on this slide, but I do want to note that in accordance with the MARTA Act, the board is required to adopt fiscal year 22 budgets, that's operating and capital budget, on or before the last day of the current fiscal year, which is June 30, 2021, following a public hearing and a review of the proposed budgets. That was the purpose for having the public hearings. We move to the next slide. We had two public hearings, one on May 10th, the other one was on May 11th. May 10th was at 11 o'clock in the morning, and May 11th was 6:30 in the evening, and they were both held virtually. And the center of the slide, we have summarized the number of attendees who participated in these public hearings. And as you can see, there were about 40 live attendees, and 262 viewed that after it was presented live on YouTube. And that was on May 10th, and on May 11th, we had 28 live folks streaming in 169 minutes afterwards. There were also a few views on Facebook, 11 on May 10th and 4. And the speakers at the public presentation were, in addition to the staff, which included myself, Kevin Hurley, our Deputy CFO, and Larry Prescott, our Chief of Capital Program. On May 11th, it was our board chair, Ms. Scott, who participated, and on May 10th, it was our past board chair, Peter Hardage, who participated. In addition to the public hearings, we had the budget documents available at the premises on the headquarters. Based on the information I have, one person came here in person to retrieve those documents. Next slide, please. This is the list of the platforms and channels through which information was disseminated to the public on the budget fiscal year 22 proposed budget. As you can see, it was a pretty good mix of print, social media, in addition to email and text messages. We move to the next one. Next one. Thank you. I mean, there were 3 public comments we received. One with respect to the cleanliness and safety of the system. The second one was a suggestion on how MARTA could expand service and better serve customers. The last one was to thank us for not getting repairs. Next slide, please. With that, I'm requesting the approval by the board of the fiscal year 22 operating and capital budget as submitted. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Raj. Can I get a motion and second concerning the resolution?
I'll move
Hardage,
approval.
I move.
Okay, I have
And
approval by.
I'll second.
Okay, I got the approval by Dury. Who seconded?
Hardage made the motion. Hardage made the motion, and I'll second it.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Are there any discussions by the board members?
Mr. Chair, I just have a few comments.
Yes, go right ahead, Mr.
I
Pond.
went through and looked at each of the departments' breakdown, and I like where you're putting additional resources in the customer experience and also in cybersecurity. I just had a couple of questions, and I know there was a lot of time. It wasn't clear to me, like under chief counsel, not to pick on the attorneys, but the non-labor part was a very significant increase. And the same thing in the labor employee relations, a very large increase. And third piece, the police was reduced a little bit. And I'm not suggesting any of that needs to be changed. I would just suggest that we look at that and be sure we covered it. I'm particularly surprised with police, that number going down.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond, actually, we increased the number of police and safety personnel, not reduced, compared to the actual numbers we had in fiscal year 21. I'm sorry, was there another question?
Well, the question was the non-labor part of legal and general counsel.
So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, this is, I don't want to interrupt you, Raj, if you wanted to say something. This is Jeff.
That's okay, that's fine.
So I believe the increase in legal services is related to both outside counsel as well as claims against us, and making sure that we're funding ourselves for claims. And then I also do want to point out that for safety and security, although I think within the safety department there wasn't a decrease in the dollar budget, but as you pointed out, there was in the police. we have increased the personnel side of both police and safety as we have in cybersecurity. But in police and safety, we have transitioned some of the contracts that we were using for some support functions. Like, for example, within the police department, the persons who were pulling video and supporting the police department, non-sworn personnel, were being done through consultant services. The chief and I had some conversations about converting those to staff, reducing the number of people who were doing it. So we were able to achieve some savings there. But I think it's important that I do reiterate that the number of increase in the safety and the police personnel ranks was achieved through this budget.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, I do want to say that this is such a very, I think, appropriate budget and conservative budget for us at this time. We're very fortunate that we can be able to inject some positive revenue in an environment where so many other transit agencies are really struggling with meeting their operating expenses. So I think that we've done a great job in moving this process forward. Did I hear any other comments from the board members?
Yes, this is Board Member Blakely.
Yes, go ahead,
Question
Blakely.
similar to what was just asked, in regard to the labor employee relations increase, that one was pretty substantial as well. Can Jeff or whomever, Raj, could you expound on that one as well?
Yeah, I'll be happy to assist if I may. This year we created we elevated the director of labor and employee relations position to an AGM position, and we created a separate department to assist us in better negotiating with our union partners and to give us a better opportunity to develop a long-term strategy for how we develop the relations and manage our contractual obligations with our union partners. And that is partly the reason why you see an increase. We also made the function of employee relations a more robust function so as to enable us to be more proactive in the resolution of employee relations investigations and case resolution.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thank you very much, Ms. Luz Guerrero. Okay, any other comments? Have any other questions from the board members? Okay, hearing none, I call the question. Are there any extensions to the resolution that's been presented for the budget for 2022? Are there any abstentions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. Raj, I want to thank you very much for your presentation. The last item on the agenda is a briefing for FY 2021, the third quarter financial highlights and financial performance indicators. Raj, Chief Financial Officer, you have the floor again.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And again, it's kind of still the good news continues. That the thing we have seen the last few months, which is both revenues and expenses are trending favorably, and they continue to trend favorably. And for 9 months ending March 31, 2021, our overall surplus was about $111 million. The combination of surpluses in revenues, as well as combination of lower than budgeted expenses. You move to the next slide. So on the revenue side, the positive variance is due to three different things. Number one, the sales tax actual receipts were higher than budget by about roughly $14 million. And to a large extent, the revenues were positive because of the CARES Act funding we received, which is the stimulus funding we got. And there was also a small contribution from a credit we received this year for prior period adjustment. So that also contributed. All those three things contributed to the positive variance in our operating revenues. On the expense side, the biggest factor or the biggest reason for positive variance is, but we still continue to have about roughly 400 vacancies. Although it has reduced a little bit, so a few months ago, in February when I joined, January when I joined, it was about 425. Now it's about 395. So it's an improvement, but still we have a vacancy. And it's savings in not just in salaries, but also corresponding benefits because of those vacancies. And the last reason for positive variance on the expense category is because of contractual services, which is a paratransit service, which has also been lower because of COVID-19. We move to the next slide. This is just for the month of March. Again, the same reasons for positive variances, both in the revenue and expenses. As I said, it is sales tax and higher than estimated recognition of the CARES Act funding that contributed to a positive variance in the revenue, and expense continues to be positive because of vacancies. Move to the next one. And I believe I already went through this. This is just, for the year to date, this is just for the month of March. As you can see, the revenues were 52.9 and the operating expenses were 44, which gave us a net positive variance of about $18 million. Next one, please. That concludes my presentation of the fiscal quarter third performance.
Thank you very much, Raj. All right. Do we have any other comments or questions from the board members? If not, I'd like to take a moment just to mention that I want to recognize the tragic shooting that happened yesterday at the transit agency, VTA in San Jose. It was a shooting that was happening at the transit station, and our thoughts and our prayers go out to the family and the co-workers who were all victims of this very senseless shooting. We understand that this impacts so many lives when these things happen in public spaces and private spaces, and we know that transit agency to know that they are in our thoughts and in our prayers as they deal with this whole recovering from this tragic situation. Are there any other comments from the board members at this moment? We're hearing none. I want to say thank you to everyone for their attention to this Business Management Committee, and I'd like to call it to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.